All right, I think we're at top of the hour, getting ready to go. Hello, and welcome to today's AEIS webinar. I'm Truman Esmond, Vice President of Membership and Solutions at AEIS. I'm thrilled to introduce this interesting and thought-provoking panel. As the modern member-based advisory organization, we are in a unique, unbiased position to bring together industry leaders from across the industry in a way others can't or won't, all for the benefit of member and non-member carriers, as well as our community of regulators and valued partners. Many will know that AEIS is at the forefront of new and emerging technologies that are improving data management and regulatory compliance processes. From machine learning and artificial intelligence and blockchain, we are acutely aware that technology is accelerating and influencing virtually every part of the insurance ecosystem, right down to the customer buying decision. Today, we have a wonderful panel of speakers that will look at trends in technology that are influencing the insurance market and how they're adjusting their operations and market approaches as a result to compete for the customer of the future. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest moderator for today's panel discussion. Amity Hungerford is CMO at Brightcore, longtime partner and supporter of AEIS. Amity has more than 2 decades of experience in driving growth and innovation strategies across the B2B enterprise software and technology market. He's doing great things at Brightcore. Amity, welcome to the AEIS webinar series.
Thank you, Truman. It's wonderful to be here talking with this audience about something we're so passionate about at Brightcore. At Brightcore, as a leading modern core insurance platform, we focus on helping P&C insurers grow, increase their efficiency and productivity, and as well, we help them future-proof their operations. So we've invited 2 leading mutual insurers to discuss firsthand how smaller P&C insurers can compete and win the customer of the future. Brightcore arranged this webinar since, as we all know, an insurer's core system plays a pivotal role in their operational agility. And today we'll explore a range of topics related to industry trends, modernization of core systems, and best practices for an insurer to consider. Before getting started, I just have a few housekeeping items I thought I would mention. First off, I want to remind our audience that later in our webinar, we'll be opening up to a live Q&A session. I know everyone is looking forward to that. Please feel free to enter your questions into the Q&A panel at the bottom of our Zoom screen, and we'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible during today's session. Second, Brightcore, we're currently in the midst of conducting our annual industry survey of P&C core systems. And if you have an interest in receiving our complimentary full report, then I encourage you to click the link at the bottom of the original email invitation that we sent for today's webinar. And today in the webinar, I plan to share some early results and some interesting insights from the initial respondents to the survey, but we look forward to having more people participate, and we'll tell you how to do that at the end as well. With that preamble, let's jump right into today's session. Industry trends related to technology, agents, and policyholder experience certainly influence insurers' actions, but let's discuss what insurers can do to stay competitive in today's market. So to have that discussion, we've invited 2 insurance senior leaders to share their insights. It's my pleasure to introduce our 2 panelists, Barbie Lambert and Dan DeArmond. Barbie is general manager of East Tennessee Mutual Insurance Company, a position she's held since 2011. In March of 2021, in addition to management of the company, she was elected as secretary treasurer and also placed on the board of directors. Barbie served as a secretary treasurer of the Tennessee State Association of Mutual Insurance Companies for the past 11 years. Welcome, Barbie.
Hi, thank you.
All right. And also joining us today is Dan DeArmond. Dan is president and CEO of Friends Cove Mutual Insurance Company, serving as CEO of Friends Cove for more than 17 years and active in the insurance industry. Dan holds the PFMM designation and chairs the NAMIC Farm Mutual Forum Board. He is also a past president of PAMIC, the Pennsylvania Association of Mutual Insurance Companies. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Amity. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, thank you both. I'm glad you're both joining us today. This is going to be a great conversation. Let's just kick things off with a bit of background. Barbie, maybe you can lead the way and tell us about your company, its history, location, and the markets you serve, and then maybe move into sharing some experiences with process and technology gaps with your past legacy systems and how they impacted your ability to be competitive.
All right, thanks, Amity. So our company is 125 years old. It's in a small rural town in East Tennessee. We're close to Virginia, close to North Carolina, but we've serviced the smaller community for a lot of years. So I have to give you a little bit of history with our company. In 2001, they didn't even have a computer in the office. When I started in 2008, they didn't offer credit cards. On this legacy system that, was pretty much all that we had access to and all that was available to us at the time. So we've come a long way. We signed on with Brightcore in 2011. That was my first year managing, but also a cat loss year for us, which really showed us a lot of inadequacies in our legacy systems and the way that our internal processes were. So we've had a lot of trials in that short amount of time. So we've come a long way. I'm happy to say we've grown quite a bit since then. We merged with one other company that was in a state or in a county, like 2 county access of Brightcore. Without that, I don't think it would have been a successful merger. So we've had a lot of those things. I was talking to my employee earlier, and I said, you don't realize that what we had before, when you had to do 5 different things in order just to process a renewal. And when the deck page would print off and then the billing would print off, and they printed off in different orders and you would have to match them up. So sometimes it would take us 3 or 4 days to process, and you had to process the whole month at the beginning of the month. So you couldn't wait for the day for it to actually renew. So what took us we had to have 2 or 3 people in the office, cut that down to like 1.5 really at that point. So just cleaning up the internal processes made it easier for us to help our customers and help our agents. When the agents used to have to fax things in for you to give them a quote, now they can get online and do it themselves. So you're not having to do that. Of course, you still have some that would like to be that way, but we're pushing them in the right direction with the technology. So that's where we are.
Great. Yeah, that's excellent. Thanks for just sharing some of the background history and where you've come from. Dan, over to you. Maybe in your role, share a bit about Friends Cove, what you're experiencing prior to modernizing your systems.
Yeah, thanks, Amity. So Friends Cove is similarly a small mutual. We're a single state writer in Pennsylvania, located in the kind of southwestern area, excuse me. And we do write all over the state. We write primarily homes and tenant occupied dwellings. And so at about $3.5 million, we're at kind of a typical small mutual in Pennsylvania and in a lot of states, actually. The story of us and our legacy system is maybe a little interesting. So really what drove us from our legacy system was a lack of granularity of data and customer service. And I'll kind of give a little explanation of that. So back in 2009, we, as all companies were, required to submit a market conduct annual statement each year. And that particular year, the Pennsylvania Insurance Department asked for some detail behind the numbers. We went to our legacy provider, and we were, and it's important to note that the department wanted that within 30 days. We went to our legacy provider and they told us it would be 60 to 90 days before they could give us anything. And so that wasn't the only issue, but that was kind of the issue that really pushed me. And so we ended up being, we'll fast forward a year or two, we ended up being one of 6 companies that came together to help form Brightcore, along with Phil and Chris Reynolds. And so we were there from the very beginning. And we've seen the evolution of the product from 0 code, just being a concept, to where it is today. And we're really proud to have been part of that. We went live in 2011 and haven't looked back since.
Fantastic. I tell you, it's good that you and I both got the memo about the white shirt, right? So
Exactly.
when I look at my screen, I can see us both framing Barbie nicely with our nondescript shirts. And so, Dan, maybe you can enter into another area that is one that we see when we survey the industry. We see that agent experience, modernizing the relationship with agents, is really important. Can you talk to that? Just speak about your own experiences there, and also I'm going to ask the same question around policyholders and staff at some point, but maybe start with agents.
Yeah, we've really seen a vast progression over the years with that. So if I start back in 2010, before we modernized our system, our agents did have access to our system, but it was through Microsoft Remote Desktop. And so they were logging in to really see a view of our server, and everything was through that portal. Fast forward a few years when we did modernize our system, and it was everything was available to the agent in their browser. And so it was a significant change both for us and for the agent. It was so much easier to not have to manage those connections, those remote print options, all of the things. And I realize I'm speaking in, I have to go back 10 or 12 years to that time to really think about this, but that ease of access was huge. And over the years, that has continued to grow and be added to. So things that we've seen added to our system have been things like live chat in our quoting, where an agent can, in the middle of quoting something, if they're sitting across the desk from an insured, they don't necessarily want to pick up the phone. Maybe they'll reach us. Maybe somebody's on the phone. Maybe they want to ask a question kind of not in earshot of the insured. And so they can simply pull up live chat and chat with an underwriter on the spot. It's also convenient just because you don't have to leave a voicemail. You just, it's just like texting. But other things like replacement cost estimators being kind of built into the process, data access from vendors like Hazard Hub, and things like upload, download, and electronic mortgagee notification. I mean, I can run down through a lot of lists, but that gives a flavor of the kinds of advancements that we've been able to see, and they've been a progression over time. It wasn't all there in the beginning, but they continue to be added, and it continues to make that process that the agent goes through easier and easier for them. And, let's face it, that's really the goal. We want to make it as easy and as frictionless as we can, because we want to write business. And that's one of the key factors.
Absolutely. Barbie, any comments to add, Dan's?
More, on the agent side, but just on the staffing side too. I know I just had a new employee start in December, and by March she was showing me things that are like new things, like, oh, did you try this? And I was like, okay, because I've been on it since 2011, so I'm used to my processes in there. But having a system like Brightcore that is constantly evolving, and so there may be a feature that my small company, I can't afford to ask for it or something, but I'm benefiting from the community aspect of Brightcore, which I don't think you find that in hardly any other company. But then, as Dan was talking about, on the agent side, having being able to build in your underwriting questions into the quote, so that they know that this isn't covered, this is covered, these are product offerings. It's all built in your system. So you're not having to go to a paper manual or online manual or call the agent. But yeah, having the online chat is very beneficial. Having the electronic mortgagee notification, you just click a button and automatically it's done. So it's great to have a product like Brightcore to be able to offer those kind of things.
Hey, Dan, maybe you can also comment, as Barbie did, on staff. Any staff stories or experiences around how everything improved, or
yeah,
the older side too as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I can think back and at our peak, and we had a staff of 8, and it really kind of took that many to do everything that we needed to do and wanted to do. And through some just natural attrition, we didn't go out and fire our staff, but through some natural attrition, we have a staff of 5 now, and we're able to do really the same job that we required 8 people before. So there's serious efficiencies, that you can find over time with the right system. So yeah.
Well, you're actually going right into one of my next questions. I'm curious. A big part of P&C Insurer is, when you arrive in the office each day, there's a range of activities that we call daily processing activities and the like. And if you could think of before and after, how the daily processing activities, how you spent your time before versus how you spend your time now, and what that experience change has been. Could you just speak to that, Barbie? Maybe you can start, and then we'll ask Dan the same.
Well, the processes were one, you would come in, make the payments, and try to put them into the old system. You make those payments. In order to look at a policy, you would have to pull out the paper file and then go through it, leaf through it to see if they made a payment before or anything like that. If you wanted to send out a new declaration, you had like 3 different steps you had to go through. Now, we come in, we do make those daily payments, but things are printed off when I come in. I get an email at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 4, saying the print job has happened. And if for some reason it hasn't, then I know that I need to look at that right away. But everything's printed off the day of that it needs to be sent out in the mail. So that process is shortened down a lot in there. But the day that we got rid of all of our filing cabinets was a great day.
What physical changes have you seen in storage? I mean, just storage savings or cost I'm curious just on that front. I've heard some amazing stories from speaking to others across the industry, but maybe speak to that.
Oh, goodness. So our paper consumption went down tremendously because we're not having to print off 3 or 4 copies of things. I couldn't tell you the last time I bought file folders. We have no use for them other than, a couple of things, minor things. But yeah, the day I got rid of those, I put a couch in the place where it was, made it cozy and everything, but our expenses went down quite a bit. So you're talking probably about at least 20-30% just on the paper products alone.
Dan, what have your before and after experiences been?
So it wasn't maybe quite as dramatic as Barbie's, but it wasn't that far from it. One of the key things that we did, and actually this was done fairly recently, maybe about 5 years ago, over the time span of our 12 years with Brightcore, is that we began outsourcing our printing and mailing, and we happened to use mass printing. That is that integration. It happened to coincide quite nicely with when our postage machine broke and was so old that it couldn't be repaired, and we were going to have to spend a significant sum on a new one. And so at that point, I took the leap and went with mass printing, where all of our deliverables each day are just automatically pushed to mass printing. They're printed and mailed. And I thought, well, this is convenient. And I will tell you that looking back, that is probably, at least in the past 5 years, that is the single biggest efficiency that we've gained at Friends Cove. It's maybe a wash on the cost perspective for a company our size, but I will say that when I did the analysis, the more policies that you have, the larger company you are, the cheaper it becomes. So we're kind of at a break-even point at our size. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other in terms of postage and paper and all that sort of thing. What it does save quite a bit, though, is labor. Nobody has to go to the printer, fold, stuff envelopes, run postage, go to the post office, all of that sort of thing. And that's been probably the biggest game changer for us in the past 5 years.
I bet. And now you've got this nice boat anchor in the form of a postage machine that you can just put a rope around and toss overboard.
Yeah.
And anchor anywhere you need to on the lake, right?
Precisely.
So I hear of efficiencies, and in order for the smaller insurers to compete with the largers, through technology and processes, I also hear of growth initiatives, like having the platform that allows you to grow in ways that you might want to. And so, as you consider those growth opportunities, what are some of the considerations, and how has a modern system enabled you to grow and in various dimensions? Maybe, but Dan, you could start off, and then Barbie next, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So we're currently focusing on growing our agency base by adding new agents and also connecting in better ways with our existing agency base. And one of the ways one of the things that's on our agenda for the next 12 to 18 months that maybe in a sense we're perhaps a little behind the curve on this is adding agency upload download. It's been available in our system for years, but when we first looked at it, many of our agents didn't have those systems in place. And I will confess that's more than 2 years ago. That's probably 6 or 7 years ago when we kind of did that survey. But I think that is that's a lever we want to pull. I think that it's because it's available. It's something, and because almost every agency has an agency management system these days, they're looking for those efficiencies. And when they have to manually key in renewals or cancellations into that system, that's a friction point. And it's a friction point that I think we as a company need to get past. So that's one of the ways that I think will help us with our existing agency base to maybe reduce that friction, kind of present ourselves as, hey, we can do the same thing that much larger companies can do. Maybe not every small mutual can do this, but we're playing in a larger sandbox when we talk about those things.
That's right. Barbie, on to you.
Our major levers right now is we've been working for about 18 months on another merger with another small mutual. The one we had in 2014 was successful, like I said, because of Brightcore. At that office, we did keep that office open, and we're able to do that because we have online access to Brightcore, the constant communication. We anticipate this next merger, the transition of their policies over very quickly and very efficiently. The employee there, she's very excited about the program. That was one of the big draws to discussing merger with us, was because we had this capability and this system that was in place and everything. We've been able to expand our product offerings because before, when you have to choose between 4 or 5 different things, the agent may not want to look at 2 out of the 4 of those. But this way it's all lined up for them. And so those are things, pricing on those too, trying to manually price a homeowner's policy and having to have it chart it out, and then having to go through and pick out of the chart what that price is going to be. Now it's all online. It's all like built into the system. And, we didn't have that before. But yeah, when talking to the state and talking with the other, this other company, that Brightcore is the big draw on there. So, we are going to look at, again, like Dan, just expanding independent agents and, driving them and showing them all that we have to offer. We're going to continue to do that as well. But been trying hard for 18 months on this last merger project. So we'll see how that goes.
Good luck with, yeah. We're in the midst, Brightcore is, of our survey I mentioned at the front end. And one of the early insights that I'm seeing emerge is when we asked a question around the important qualities of a core insurance system for P&C insurers. You see, we have a range of options people could choose, enabling digital channels and portals, or introducing new product lines and regions like we're talking about here now, reporting and analytics, all-in-one system, things like that. But what turned out to be the number one response, which was eye-opening, is to ensure reliability, security, and disaster recovery, is what unanimously, almost, not quite, but everyone wants to ensure that they are on a core system that's reliable, secure, and enables disaster recovery. Dan, what's your thought on that? I mean, no surprise to you, right? Or what's your thought?
Yeah. So that's an interesting result, and I understand it, because we're hopefully on the other side of a pandemic, and what tested everyone's disaster recovery plan was COVID-19. And I will say that when COVID-19 hit, if I'm remembering the date correctly, it was March 16th. Was when we all went remote, and no one went into the office. And it was pretty easy for us. We really only I had to have the employees go into the office separately and pick up their laptop and printer, scanner, if they had external monitor, and their phone, and take it all home. And we use a voice over IP phone system. We use Brightcore as our processing system, which is in the cloud and Amazon Web Services. We have our printing with mass printing, a few other things, but we had set it up, some of this very intentionally. The mass printing part wasn't necessarily intentional, but it worked out perfectly, that we were very well set up to test that disaster recovery plan, because nobody could be in the office. And I think the great testament to that is that we're now over 2 years beyond that point, and we are still almost fully remote. I go into the office every now and then, usually once or twice a week, but nobody else does, except to sign checks, honestly, when we're paying bills. We require 2 signatures. And there's a way around that. We just haven't done it at this point. So disaster recovery matches up pretty well with the system we have.
Barbie, thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, that's something that, especially when talking with the state, when you have your state audit and on a regular basis, when you're doing your governance stuff, I mean, one of the things they want to know is that you have a disaster recovery plan in place. And it's really easy because, like Dan said, during the pandemic, now I chose to come into the office because we only had 2 employees, but also had a kid that was in school too. So he had to do remote learning, and it was just easier to get out of the house. And I like being at the office. It separates me a little bit, but that's just my personal preference. So, but the lady that worked for me at the time, I mean, she didn't come into the office for 5 weeks. So, it wasn't a big loss at that point either for her not to be here. Because again, everything is running, functioning very efficiently and all of that. So, but the other thing is, we're having to, more than likely within the next year, we're going to have to file a report with the state about the cyber part of things and how you have controls. And I had helped another company in a different state. And I said, well, did you contact your Brightcore? Because you guys do all the testing and everything on that platform. So you have the data and you have those reports for us. I said, all you have to do is contact them. They'll send you the report and you can send that to the state. There's some internal things. They still keep their old server. I don't know why, but that's just their preference. I said, you'll have to have something for that. But from my point of view, because of the reports that you guys submit to us and have available for us, that takes the burden off of me and my worry at the end of the day. So when people are asking about, well, you worry about cybersecurity, how do I know my policy is safe in there? I say, well, Brightcore's done all this testing. Here's the reports. This is who they test through. And I have that data available to hand to them. So it makes me sleep easier at night, personally.
Absolutely.
So
I heard a story of one of our insurers that had 2 servers before they made the shift to a modern cloud native system. They had 2 servers in their office, and they got a ransomware notice on one of the servers that was just taken over. And unfortunately, that server did not have customer data on it and was a backup server somehow to some other function, maybe printing or some, I don't know, but it was something they were able to easily turn off, but it opened their eyes to how serious this situation could be, and that they didn't think it would ever reach them, but it can happen. And you want to be in a position where you've got, you know, the highest level of controls and security and you know, we at, you know, and companies, you know, all know these large data centers far surpass anything anyone could do in their own basement or closet. You know, when these large, you know, AWS is, you know, second to none really in terms of what it provides in terms of assurance for all of these insurers that leverage systems on AWS. So let me, before we go into another question, remind the audience that we are going to open up for live Q&A. And if you would like, you can go into the Q&A panel that's part of the Zoom platform and enter a question. And, you know, we'll go through the questions towards the end here and do our best to answer before we wrap up. So if you were to, maybe, Barbie, you can kick this one off. If you were going to give advice to a smaller insurer who wants to be more competitive, what are the key insights you would provide them? Like, what are your thoughts on how you would advise someone that's a smaller insurer and you know, they want to improve their competitiveness in the market?
So I think you mentioned before, but I'm the secretary treasurer of our state association. So we have a lot of other small mutuals in our association. And one of the things I tell them is to not be afraid to invest in the things that are going to make you like a platform like Brightcore. Invest in those things because it will help push you competitively. Because, you know, it's really hard to walk into an agent and ask them to write for you when you don't even have an online presence, you don't have a way for them to quote online. So it's not even just getting them like Dan's doing to get them in that like bubble or whatever, where they just send all their information to your site. But it just, if you don't have a way for them to quote online, you're gonna lose them that business. So I just tell them to go ahead and invest the money, because I talked to several and they said, well, we're gonna wait till we have an underwriting profit. And I'm like, I don't know how you're going to get an underwriting profit without one, knowing what you have insured, what, you know, the accuracy of your data that you're getting. And I say that because when we transferred from our legacy system to Brightcore, there was $80,000 that we had to write off, but just between the bad reporting on the other system. So we haven't had a problem since then. So I'm very thankful for that. But I always just tell them, just go ahead and invest in what's going to push you to the future. And this is one of the best things you can do, is to have one of these, you know, a platform like you guys have to help the small companies and the big companies. Your all's product works for both. So.
But it's important to have complete visibility to everything within the business. And so it opens your eyes when you go through that transition to what you know, poor visibility can mean. And it can be a material, you don't want it to be a material amount. You don't want it to be so material that it's significant, but it's really good to have complete controls. And so absolutely. Hey, Dan, on your end, what advice would you give a small insurer?
Well, I think obviously leveraging technology is important, but it's just as important to continue to leverage relationships with agencies and policyholders. You know, I think that's what small mutuals have been doing for over 200 years, starting with Ben Franklin's the Philadelphia Contribution Ship. And so we continue to carry on that tradition. Having said that, relationships alone won't allow a small mutual to grow and thrive in 2022. It's a combination of things. So it's going to be relationships, technology, products, and customer service, and the proper mix of all of those. And so it's important not to lose sight of any of that, and finding the right combination.
Absolutely. I see a question that just came through. It probably is a good one, Dan, because you touched on this subject. So I'm going to point this one to you. Does the Brightcore system have a paperless option for insureds? Our current system does not, but I believe we could make it available through a third-party vendor. Go ahead.
Yeah, it does. In fact, the Brightcore system has something called Bright Apps, which is available, and it is both a mobile app and it is a web portal for the insured. And so e-delivery is available through that. The insured does have to sign up, but it's a very simple process. And there are ways to kind of encourage that at the front end when you write the policy, so that they're on that right from the start. And it also allows them to manage their payments, the payment plan, and even file a claim and submit photos if it's a simple claim. Some things can be handled right over that. So yeah, it's a great tool that, to answer your question, allows for e-delivery.
Excellent. I see two related questions, highly related. So I'm going to read them both, but I'm going to ask maybe that you both comment on them because I think they have to do with migrating to Brightcore or modern system. It says, and the first one, hello, other than rekeying policy data, what is the typical process for migrating to Brightcore and how long does it take? A related question was, when you made the move to a new system, did you move all lines at once or did you move product by product? How long, if by product, how difficult was it to have dual systems in place? That's a series of highly related questions there, I would say. Barbie, you want to start on that one?
Well, you're probably going to laugh, but at the time when we took on Brightcore, we had two lines of business, and that was just a standard fire and a homeowners, okay. Which have grown since then. But I mean, it was manual putting it over, but I mean, we did it month by month as the renewals came in, or anticipated how long we wanted before renewal. My anticipation with the merger that we have, they have about 500 policies. We're going to have them all in our system within a month. So I think between our staffing, between their staff and our staff here, we can get it done rather quickly. So to me, it wasn't that big of a deal. And when I went on to Brightcore, I knew that there were going to be changes that needed to be made at the time. So I went ahead and made the changes as they needed to be to, one, make sure that everything functioned properly, everything worked, everything quoted correctly. We had some other internal things that needed to be changed, and I just changed them at the time. I guess my biggest thing is don't be afraid of change, and don't be afraid to say, we need to change this process to make sure that everything works correctly, or and it may benefit you in the long run anyway. So,
Dan, your experiences in that front?
Yeah, so I'll preface it by saying that we were the second company to go live on Brightcore, and Brightcore was really just had only been a live product for maybe 7 months when we actually started generating the first policy. So the migration process for us was more manual than it would be today. I know that there are migration tools that pull not only the policy shell, but a lot of detail over and mapping that brings things over. And that's outside of my own experience, so I won't really speak to that. But for us, we, based on our size, we migrated all lines of business at the same time. We did take a year to migrate policies off of our legacy system and over to our new system. The obvious date is renewal date. So we started January 1 of 2011, and by December 31st, we had all policies migrated over. And we were able to finish out the annual reporting for that year and really just kind of shut down the legacy system after that. I think, though, in a larger sense, though, it really depends on the size of your company. Given our size at 3.5 million, roughly 5,000 policies, we're at a size where that's very feasible to do everything all at once. If I amplified that by 20 times, then I think there are other considerations to make. You could still do it. You could certainly put all lines up and roll them over the course of a year. But I know some other companies have made choices to run up one line and kind of work out, their systems, their processes, make sure that they can't have adapted to the way they need to operate their renewals, et cetera, and then kind of migrate over everything else. So I think it's a personal preference and to some extent a size issue whenever you're talking about different companies.
Yeah, completely agree. I see another question that came through that's more specific to an area of insurance processing. It's around, from a claims processing standpoint, how has BrightCore helped? Dan, do you want to lead off on that one?
Yeah, from a claims processing, I think one of the major improvements that we saw is just the fact that we can keep everything within our core system in one spot. And so we can receive photos from an insured, from our independent adjuster, from, even our staff adjuster, if we have the staff adjuster go out. And it's all in one place. The accounting is integrated, the document storage is integrated, the notes are integrated. And so it does give us a kind of a one-stop shop for that process, rather than having, let's see, what are some of the other, well, without using some brand names, rather than having a different system for, document storage or, file tracker or what have you, that then has to have an integration with your core system. It's awfully convenient to just have everything in one spot.
Truly. Barbie, from your perspective?
Well, we were doing everything on paper and a spreadsheet. So, this process was a lot better. But one of the things I think that is being able to take the claims data, like your losses, and compare them to your written or your earned premium, and having a report available to you to show and track that throughout the year. So you can pull it up on a day-to-day basis. And, change. I can look it up today, and I can look it up from like 2 weeks ago. So you have that information a lot more available. And then also you can see how many claims someone's had. So I pull up somebody's policy, they filed a claim, and all of a sudden there's a place down in there that says, oh, they've had 2 other claims. And it'll show me, I click on those and refer back to those other claims to see, one, if we've already made the claim payment before, if they're trying to, or maybe it's a habit for them. So it's a lot easier to track that information, where before, we had to go off of memory, or we had to go and look through 6 or 7 spreadsheets, over a course of several years. But yeah, being able to have that data and then having inspections in the attachments of the regular policy to compare to what the claims report is that you put into the claim file. So everything's all inclusive in that one policy.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. I'm scanning and I see more questions, but I know I'm getting the shepherd's hook here. So I just want to, start our process of wrapping up, and we'll do some follow-ups with individuals later for the remaining questions we weren't able to get to. I thought that was a wonderful discussion. I, once again, would like to thank Barbie and Dan for joining us today and sharing their experiences, insights, and advice. I also want to thank our partner AIS for hosting this event today. We appreciate your support and partnership within the industry. Also, as I mentioned earlier, would like to invite those insurers in the audience to find a few minutes, lend your voice to our industry survey. And by doing so, you not only do you get a free copy of the final report, but you get this nice $50 Amazon gift card. So it's a good benefit in 2 dimensions. I'm Amity Hungerford, CMO at BrightCore. It's been a pleasure to spend the last hour with you. Should you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us at info@brightcore.com. And Truman, I'm going to hand it back over to you over at AIS.
Thanks, Amity, and that was definitely a terrific and enlightening session. I definitely want to add my thanks to Barbie and Dan for your contributions, and thanks to you as well, Amity and BrightCore, for pulling this together. It's really been a great session, great interaction with the audience, and really appreciate the great information provided. If you missed any of today's webinar, you can catch a full replay starting tomorrow on the AAIS Views blog and our YouTube channel. Should you have any questions about any of the topics on this webinar, please contact your AAIS engagement manager or Amity at Brightcourt. They're here to help. And make sure to tell us what you thought of today's panel. We'll be sending you a short survey to collect your feedback. Your input will help guide us in prepping future AAIS webinars and publications. Until next time, this is Truman Esmond from AAIS.